Bitcoin and politics. I've got a good show lined up talking about the UK and their crypto regulation. But before I get started talking about that, let's thank our sponsor, RoundlyX. If you have ever used a platform like this, you'll know how easy it is. Just connect your credit card, debit card to it. You can stack sats without even thinking about it. In addition, there are other things you can do on RoundlyX. So if you go to roundlyx.com and if you would put in Bitcoin politics, you're going to get $4 in Bitcoin. You might not think that's a lot right now, but it is. So go check them out. Let's get on with the show. All right, folks, as I said, today is Thursday. I'm the crypto curator, Paul McNeil, and I curate news information every day except for Sunday. I have to take a day off, guys. But the reason that I do this is to help you see what's happening in the world of crypto. You'll be able to identify trends, see who's saying what, and all the other good stuff. If you check out my website, thecryptocurator.com, you'll see I put the most relevant news on the website, video, podcast, whole 9 yards. We'll get into that a little bit later. But for right now, let's get on talking about the UK and their new crypto regulation. So what happened, and this was the most covered story yesterday, but what happened was that His Majesty's Treasury submitted a consultation paper. Now, if you know, last year, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak actually expressed his plans to make UK, the nation, that nation of UK, a global crypto hub, right? So he wants to make the UK the hub of crypto. Now, this consultation paper, which was published, it's a long anticipated consultation paper for the United Kingdom's upcoming crypto regulation. And as you know, no nation really has a comprehensive regulation when it comes to crypto because the space is so new. And actually, a lot of this just started picking up. I think it's been like a couple of years, maybe a few years, that the regulators have really started paying attention. Of course, thanks to our problems in crypto is why they're paying attention. If you know the C5 blow up, and then of course our famous FTX fiasco didn't make it any better. And now the regulators are really paying attention and saying, hey, we've got to do something to stop this. And so this extensive 80-page document covers a broad range of topics from the troubles of algorithmic stablecoins, that was from the Luna debacle, to non-fungible tokens. We know how many NFTs have been getting stolen, and people talk about these monkey JPEGs, and initial coin offerings. And we know that that was a huge deal back in the day when ICOs was being launched. But so the UK is looking at all of this and saying, hey, we need to do something. And the United States is not behind either. They're also looking at all of this and trying to find regulation. Will we get global crypto regulation is really going to be the magic bullet. And I don't think that's going to be coming anytime soon. So as we look at the next slide, the UK is sort of commissioning a new crypto regime is what they call it. And this new regime is going to be focused on crypto service providers, lending platforms, prudential requirements, consumer protection, crypto issuance and disclosures, and preventing market abuse. It was actually Ian Taylor, who's a board advisor of Crypto UK, that says, as the voice of UK's crypto sector, we welcome this positive step toward greater regulatory clarity. And that's what he said. And so the industry is responding quite well to this new crypto regime, this new 80-page consultation paper about trying to establish some regulatory framework for the UK. Now, the UK formally laid out plans to regulate the cryptocurrency industry, with the government looking to rein in some of the reckless business practices that had emerged over the past year and contributed to the demise of FTX. And that came directly from CNBC, which has a huge article on this entire situation. Now, there's another quote from Andrew Griffin that says this, and he's from the UK Treasury itself. He's the economic secretary. He said, "We remain steadfast in our commitment to grow the economy, enable technological change and innovation. And This includes crypto asset technology. But we must also protect consumers who are embracing this new technology, ensuring robust transparency and fair standards. And again, so you can see that this is a very measured approach. They're not, going crazy. They're not trying to lock it all down, ban it all, destroy it all, right? This is sensible, what I would consider friendly crypto regulation that's coming about. And this is what the space needs. You've heard Mr. Wonderful talk about this many times. He said we need regulation in this space because if we do get regulatory clarity, then we'll see this wall of money that's coming into crypto, coming from sovereign wealth funds, big hedge funds, high net worth individuals, so forth, so on. Now, following a turbulent year, and this is another point that Andrew Griffith was making. He says, following a turbulent year in crypto markets in 2022, Griffin hopes to achieve clear, effective, timely regulation and proactive engagement with the industry. The crypto industry was generally receptive to the proposals and has until the end of April to submit its response. Now, later in this broadcast, you're going to see some of that response coming from industry, the quick response from what they've seen so far. Now, Ian Taylor, who I mentioned before, he's a board advisor at Crypto UK. He also said this, and this is a little duplication, as the voice of the UK folks. He says, given the provisions within the proposed legislation, consultation with the industry could not be more critical. We will respond to the consultation and advocate for regulation that is fit for purpose. And that's the key point. That is fit for purpose. We have a lot of players in this space, and a lot of people are going to keep the legislators' feet to the fire when it comes to trying to create this regulatory framework, as well as they're going to hold the regulators accountable too. I don't believe that we're going to see a regulator be able to implement some regulation without having pushback from the crypto community, because enough people are paying attention. And so where they're able to make effective change in regulation, I believe the crypto industry will, and that's a good sign for us all, everybody that's involved in this. Now, as I mentioned before, there are certain different pieces to this, and let's take a look at the exchanges first off, right? So part of this consultation paper that came out for the exchanges, they said they want them to beef up their compliance departments. Now, of course, this is going to cost money, and this is where we understand from the traditional finance why it's so expensive to be a regulated entity. And this is why some push back on regulation, because it gets expensive to be regulated. And so what this is going to do is that this is unfortunately going to allow those well-funded exchanges and well-funded platforms to rise to the top, while those who can't afford to get this regulation will unfortunately probably either go out of business or they'll have to find the funds to get regulated. They want them to supply details of their operations, risk management process, and financial resources, among other requirements. So there's got to be a level of transparency here. And this is, again, where some of the problem runs head in head with the Bitcoin community and its ethos of privacy. We don't want a lot of eyeballs looking at what's happening with our funds and with what we're doing. And so they're going to have to find a balance to this, showing details of their operation and risk management, things like that. But think about it. If FTX had this in place, would we have seen that happen? We probably wouldn't have. The downsides of that, maybe that there would have been too much transparency. I'm not sure. But we have to find this balance between what the crypto community wants and what regulators also need to sort of protect people. Because at the end of the day, think about it, folks. As much as we would like to keep the government out of our business, it's inevitable. We will screw some things up. And when we do, we will call on them to save us. And that's where the problem lies. Had nobody call on the regulators, we probably wouldn't hear a lot about this. But the regulators see it's their responsibility to protect the consumers, and you're going to see that in here as well. Design control systems to detect and disrupt market abuse, and they won't have to report their market data regularly. And that's a good part, is that they don't have to routinely report this information, but they have to have this information on hand that if the regulators do ask, they can provide it. And lastly, they're regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA. That'll be the regulatory body that oversees this. Now, in addition to this, exchange rules for tokens and tradings. For tokens, insider dealings have to be given to the regulators and understand how they're dealing with insiders inside these exchanges. And again, had we known this with FTX, insiders can't be just moving clients' money to a hedge fund to trade and not account for it. So insider dealing, market manipulation. Some of these exchanges, big exchanges, won't call any specific names, probably know who they are. You can't have, and again, this was FTX, right? You had an exchange and you had a hedge fund, which was a market maker. So the market makers tied to the exchange, they can play games all day long and they can manipulate the market. Not fair for the little guy. So this regulation is going to address that. Unlawful disclosure of inside information as well. When it comes to trading, obtaining the best execution order results. That's another one that's big when it comes to traders. So with the exchanges, you can see some of these regulations, they're not outlandish, but they are going to hopefully put some guidelines in place. Now, as we turn to the lenders, and again, this brings into Celsius, BlockFi, Voyager, right? All these people that are lending. Strict regulation on risky loans between multiple crypto firms. Again, we found this out with Terra Luna, Three Arrows Capital, right? How the money was being lent back and forth. It was very incestuous how much money was flowing in between all of these organizations. And again, this regulation hopefully will address some of that. And their lenders are also going to be regulated by the FCA. When we look at custodians, they're regulated by the FCA, and same thing goes for stablecoin. Well, just for custodians, let me stop right there. So custodians, this is huge because if people are allowing their assets to be with the custodian, they're going to have to also have some oversight and some visibility. There wasn't a lot in the news articles about what the specifics to the custodians. That's why I just put that they were regulated by the FCA. But here's the thing, not your keys, not your coins, right? We've heard that. There are organizations out there to help you be able to manage your assets without having them on third-party exchanges and without having them with third-party custodians for individuals. Now, there are some people that can't get around not having a custodian. When you begin to get into the large entities and institutions, they have to have custodians. So this regulation is going to make sure that those custodians are playing by fair rules as well. When we look at stable coins, they are subject to unbacked crypto asset requirements. Why is this important? Because with stable coins, we know we have algorithmic stable coins. Again, this was the problem with Terra Luna and the Luna stable coin that they had, is that it was an algorithmic stable coin pegging itself to Bitcoin, which is the most volatile asset on the planet. And so it became depegged very easily, thanks to the shenanigans, probably by some of the big guys. BlackRock, well, I may never name their names. But anyway, those stable coins that are algorithmic, they're saying they're subject to unbacked crypto asset requirements. And that's key because people need to understand what they're dealing with when they're dealing with stable coins. This is not applying to USDC and USDT, not at all, because those are supposed to be backed one for one with some particular asset, supposedly. We don't know for sure. All right, as we look at ICOs, security offering rules will be applied to those. And again, we know from the ICO debacle that blew up, we know that a lot of these ICOs are in fact securities. So they need to apply to the security offerings rule. Due diligence have to be done on the tokens that are being offered by these ICOs, and admission and disclosure documents have to be filed correctly. Now, the Treasury calls for a helping hand from respondents on certain topics to provide more data, including decentralized finance, sustainability, and other crypto activities, such as mining, staking, and investment activities. So the next thing that we're looking at is that, and this is unfortunate, if some of these entities are actually registered, they're going to have to register again. Crypto firms already registered under the MLR regime and carrying out those activities would be required to seek authorization under the new FSMA-based regime. The document said, a comment likely to generate apprehension from those who already dealt with the FCA. And I have to agree with them. If you're registered, why do I have to register again? They should know the players. They should be able to grandfather some of those players in, or say you have to add a supplement registration, which is not a full-blown registration. I think that's probably what will happen, to say we need additional information, that's all. You don't have to go back through the process. That would be a backbreaker. So self-custody, as you guys know, is huge, and we've talked about it many, many times. Unchained Capital, as I mentioned before, is an outfit that will help you know how to custody your assets. I was actually talking to a good friend today, and he's mining Bitcoin. He's now gotten into the mining game, and him and a business partner. And I've told them, you need to have some type of an estate planning function built into place. And so those Bitcoin that you get from mining, my hope is that they'll use something like an Unchained Capital with multi-sig, because that way he can have a key, his partner can have a key, and Unchained Capital can have a key. You need 2 of the 3 to move Bitcoin. That will help resolve that situation for them, hopefully. So check out Unchained Capital. All right, let's take a look at some of the industry response to this 80-page consultation paper and this new regime that the UK is talking about setting up. The number one organization, of course, Binance, has come out with theirs, and they were swift with their response. Binance has vocally supported the need for effective and appropriate regulation to help with mainstream adoption of digital assets. We welcome the next steps from the UK government in making this happen with the HM, His Majesty Treasury's publication of plans to regulate crypto activities. That was their tweet that they sent out immediately after the paper was released. Now, if we look at Ripple, Ripple also had a response. Andrew Whitworth, he's the policy director for EMEA Ripple, and he said this. He said, from today, the government should encourage further collaboration with the private sector to devise a comprehensive risk-based framework which aligns with international best practices. Again, these folks who are involved in crypto want to work with these legislators and regulators hand in hand to make sure that whatever's put in place is acceptable by the crypto community as well. And that's really big, and that's important and huge in my viewpoint. Our next industry response comes from Luno Exchange. This is Nick Taylor. He's the head of their public policy EMEA. And he says, whilst there is still a ways to go before new rules come into force, we're encouraged by the scale of the government's ambition. Regulation and innovation are not mutually exclusive. The blueprint outlined today will give businesses a level of certainty about the medium-term operating environment, making the UK a more comprehensive place to do business. This would allow companies to plan, attract investment, and create more jobs in the UK. Again, folks, something else to realize. This 80-page consultation paper was not written by government individuals by themselves. Lobbying groups take a key role in writing this type of legislation. And it's something that needs to be understood more by people, I believe, is that when it really comes to what we call the government, a lot of that is involved with lobbying firms and other people that are involved like that. Here's the thing. Lobbyists like FTX, though, are dangerous. Sam Bankman-Fried slamming money across politicians is just very bad. But lobbying forces like and this is Luna Exchange, so I'm sure they probably had a voice into it as well. Binance probably had a voice into it as well. But like Crypto UK, those organizations, they work close with government. They're the ones putting the words on the paper, handing it to the government legislators. They're reading through it, they're agreeing with it, and they're pushing it forward. And that's the way things sort of work. I wish I could get George Leonardo back on again. He could probably give us more insights on how government really works behind the scenes, because I think we're believing that some of these bills that are written by politicians. Most of them are not written by politicians. Okay, let's take a look at our next industry response coming from Kraken Exchange. As you know, see, there are a lot of exchanges in this, right? So they are having, I'm sure they had some viewpoint into this before it got released, and this is why they're probably coming out and they're being somewhat nice about what they've seen so far. Blair Halliday said this: if the UK wants to fulfill its ambition of becoming a global crypto hub, it's crucial that the proposed adaptation of existing regulation is right fitted to the asset class. Most importantly, the framework must cover firms that have no onshore presence, but which continue to offer services to UK customers. So again, being very comprehensive. Listen, there might be companies that do not reside in the UK, but they do provide services to UK customers. They need to make sure that they're also part of this. But as it said, right fitted to the right asset class. If you never saw a video by Andreas Antonopoulos when he was talking with the Canadian Senate, phenomenal presentation before the Senate answered all their questions just like that. But one of the things that Andreas Antonopoulos used to say was that you should regulate this asset class based on its use case. So if I'm using it to store value, then it should be treated like that. If I'm using it as money, it should be treated that way. If I'm using it to trade, it should be treated that way. Treat the asset based on its use case, not just try to treat the asset, because we know Bitcoin has so many different assets, as well as all the other cryptocurrencies, ICOs, NFTs, you name it, right? DAOs. There's a ton of stuff in this space. Okay, our next industry response is coming from CoinCover, Kathleen Wooler. She's the unit director there, and she said the UK's approach to digital assets so far has been sluggish despite the broad cross-party support to become a crypto hub. This sounds a little like another announcement that merely kicks the can down the road. So not everyone is excited about this, right? Some people are still taking a very skeptical eye, rightly so, until we see what really gets implemented, and that's going to make the difference. Okay, our next industry response is coming from Norton Rose Fulbright, which is a law firm, and Albert Witherall is the financial services partner. And he said a number of these proposals are well trialed, but others perhaps less so, and it is evident that the shadow cast by high-profile failures through 2022 has influenced the extent and pace of implementation of these measures. And basically saying all of these failures we had last year with the FTX, CFI, all that crap has increased the pace for these measures to be put into place. Okay, so that's what I'm going to say as far as the 80-page consultation, the new regime. Now I want to look at the EU regulation, which is dated for 9 February 2023. Smart contract draft legislation. So in addition to the rules that are being set up by this new regime, there's also regulation on smart contracts. And here are some points about what it's addressing. The Data Act, shedded weight and reduced scope. So the initial proposal that they had for smart contracts was really tight and heavy-handed. This new revised legislation, it's actually shedding some of that weight and reducing the scope of how they're dealing with the Data Act. The contractual party offering a smart contract, rigorous access control mechanisms and level of protection and legal certainties as other contracts generated through different means. This is a piece from the block, and I pulled most of this from an article from the block, but this is what they had to say. Sellers or offerers of smart contracts, for example, will no longer need to perform a conformity assessment and sign a mandatory declaration that they comply with EU requirements. Expectations for smart contracts to meet so-called harmonized standards or technical compliance specifications were also dropped. So as you can see, this new EU regulation, and this is the EU, not just UK, all of Europe, on smart contracts draft legislation, that it might wind up being a lot more friendlier and fairer for those who are trying to issue smart contracts, either the sellers or the offerers. It also said that the Committee on Industry leading negotiations on file will vote to adopt that text on February 9th. So we got about 7 days, so next week. Then it will need to go through a plenary vote in Parliament, currently expected in March. Now, if it passes, the file would then move forward to an interinstitutional negotiation through which the European Commission and European Council. So that particular regulation on smart contracts is coming up. Now, a bit of troubling news is on the EU's chat control law. This was brought to my attention by our producer, and it's a little bit scary, folks. Listen, the proposed chat control EU law will not only seize totalitarian control of all private communication, it will also ban open source operating systems as an unintended consequence. And I haven't done a lot of research in this yet, but I do want to bring it to your attention because as we're talking about the EU and UK and all what's going on over there, we got to pay attention to stuff like this. This cannot be just a, shrug of your shoulders, oh, whatever. This is not a whatever. This is serious, because if what this website is saying, and that's nobsbitcoin.com, and if this is true, folks not only folks in Europe, I'm gonna say this is gonna start filtering throughout the globe. This is just too much. Is this an end of privacy? Because this is what I've been sort of beating the drum for, is that folks, you need to begin to make your communications private by using privacy tools. We have them. Use Signal. Why are you using texting? Use Signal. It's the same thing, right? Telegram, same thing. You can use Proton Mail if you've got to use email. I detest email. I don't want to use email. But if I do use email, I'm going to try and use Proton Mail when I do email. And we need to start making sure if we're sending from Proton Mail to other platforms that we actually use the encryption feature that's there. We need to shut out the prying eyes of government into our personal affairs. Edward Snowden said what? He said, it's not about you trying to hide anything. It's just the fact that you should give permission to your private moments. And that's exactly what we need to do. If someone wants to see what you're saying, they should have your permission to read it. Reading it without your permission, regardless of a person's reading it or a machine is reading it, should be outlawed. Now, I know that the government says, well, how else are we supposed to keep criminals? Go find another way. But just surveilling all citizens is not the answer. And that's my point to you guys on that. So my hope is that you guys will listen to me and begin to make your communications more private by using the tools that's out there. Searching, DuckDuckGo, right? Browsers, Brave browsers. Or you can use Impervious, which I've started to use, which is a really cool browser. All right, I'm going to start wrapping things up, but I do want to also tell you about something else that's really exciting. There is a new foundation here in Texas. I live in the state of Texas, the great state of Texas, and it's called the Texas Bitcoin Foundation. And if you're hanging there with me, I want to read their vision and mission statements because they're really good. So from the Texas Bitcoin Foundation, they said, we envision Bitcoin as a durable infrastructure of value that underpins prosperity and cooperation for the people of Texas, the United States, and the world. The Texas Bitcoin Foundation ensures that the value of Bitcoin's protocol revolution and its impact on human societies is fully developed and rigorously theorized. We lay down the intellectual scaffolding that social scientists, engineers, and practitioners may draw upon and dialogue with as they build the social and technological infrastructure of the 21st century. And that's their vision. Now, on to their mission. The Texas Bitcoin Foundation funds and disseminates interdisciplinary research and education about Bitcoin, the related scientific, economic, and historical issues. We ensure that Bitcoin ecosystem development progresses unimpeded by championing a Texas talent pipeline and directly sponsoring contributors. Finally, the foundation provides access to Bitcoin-related resources and subject matter experts that can be drawn upon by academic and research institutions, public and private organizations, and the broader public. Folks, here in Texas, we do not play around with Bitcoin. As they always say, everything's bigger in Texas, and so is this foundation. It's taken on a Herculean task, but my hope is that through the work of this foundation, Bitcoin is going to be more freer than anywhere else on the entire planet, and that's going to reverberate throughout the entire planet. And soon, every nook and cranny of the globe will be just like Texas, freedom for all. That's all I got to say about that. Okay. Hey, listen, I want to highlight again my website, thecryptocurator.com, which is where you can find everything. This is being sponsored again by Roundly X, so please visit Roundly X. I am no longer on Twitter. I am now on Woobits. So if you see that link there, Woobits, WUBITS.com, please go check them out. This is a platform that has real people on it, not just bots. They're making real connections and they're having real conversations. If you're tired of the political cesspool that Twitter has become, you should definitely check out Woobits. Sorry, guys, I've got to push it because it is a great platform. I love talking on it every day. I will be back again on Sunday because that's going to be Bitcoin is Freedom. I'm going to continue to try to get guests on the show. So if anybody is willing to come on the show and talk about the topics of the day, please contact me. you can contact me by getting on Rubits. Or if you're on Telegram, you can find me at the Crypto Curator. But anyway, shoot me some information. I would love to talk about these with any of the industry folks that are involved in any of the associations or organizations or companies that are working with Bitcoin specifically. I'm not going to shun away some of the altcoins, top 10 projects. But when it comes to Web3, guys, I'm just not there yet. Unfortunately, I know, beat me up. There is an organization here in Texas that does that. It's called Web3 Texas. And I think you should definitely contact Nick James. He runs that. And I think you guys are going to see that, yeah, if you want to do Web3, you should go there. But other than that, it has been great talking with you. I wanted to make this short and sweet because I know you guys got things to do, and so do I. So with that, I'm going to